Warning. While this video is only meant to be entertainment, it contains content that some viewers might find disturbing. This video contains scary images, video clips, distorted music, jump scares, and violent content. If you are easily scared or you don't want to view horror content, please click off now. If not, please enjoy. The Celts are an ancient European people who have existed for thousands of years. Believed to have originated in Central Europe, somewhere in present-day Austria, the Celtic people migrated westward and settled in nearly all of Western Europe. The Celts are also believed to be the first people to have settled and create civilization in the British Isles. Over the later centuries, Celtic influence diminished throughout Europe, with the rise of the Roman Empire and the settling of Germanic peoples. Despite this, both Celtic culture and mythology has managed to survive up to this modern era, specifically in what are known as the Celtic nations. These are the countries or regions where Celtic culture has survived to this day, as they still retain their historical heritage. The Celtic nations are Ireland or Éire, Scotland, Alba, Wales, Cumbria, the Isle of Man, Cornwall, Brittany, Galicia, and Asturias. These are the places in the world where Celtic culture still remains strong even after many years, and old traditions are still practiced on certain holidays. Like all other peoples and cultures throughout the world, the Celts had their own myths, legends, and folklore. Some of the most famous figures in mythology, other than the gods and heroes, are monsters. Celtic mythology has some of the scariest, most terrifying, and dangerous monsters, demons, and creatures found in any other mythology. So tonight, I will be listing 28 of the scariest creatures found in Celtic mythology. Many of these monsters come from Ireland and Scotland, but a few of them come from the other Celtic nations as well. So please enjoy and know that this list was made with the greatest respect. So if there is some mispronunciation, please don't cry about it. So now, let us begin. My top 28 scariest monsters found in Celtic mythology. Changeling. Changelings are mischievous fairies originating from Scotland. These fairies have the ability to shapeshift, disguising themselves. It was believed that sometimes changelings would kidnap newborn babies and take them to their homes to act as servants. In place of the missing child, a changeling would be left behind disguised as it. The changeling in place would then appear to get sick, and later it would die. The parents would of course feel sad, believing that their child was dead, only for their real child to be acting as a servant for the mischievous fairies known as the changelings. Being nigh. Bee also known as the Scottish washerwoman, is a spirit appearing as an old, greying hag who would be seen near bodies of water such as streams, rivers, and lochs. There she would be washing dirty clothes filled with blood. She is similar to the Irish banshee, as she is an omen of death. It would turn out that the clothes that the Bee were washing belonged to someone who was about to die. If they were brave enough, it was even possible for someone to ask the Bee who the clothes belonged to and who was about to die, and she would answer them with the name of that person. Within the next day, that person would end up dead. The Bee isn't considered to be an evil entity, but an encounter with her can sometimes be very unnerving. The White Death. Warning! It is said that anyone who hears of this story and learns about the White Death will be murdered by a ghost. To avoid hearing this story, please skip to this time. For those of you brave enough or foolish enough, I will tell you. Sometime in Scotland, there was once a girl who hated herself so much she didn't want to exist. So, she killed herself. Though she was dead, her family and friends still remembered her. This greatly angered her ghost, and so, as a wrathful spirit, she murdered all of those who knew of her. Her parents, her siblings, her friends, even her pets. No one could know of her existence, and so no one who knew of her existence could live. It is said that those who know of this story will be murdered by the ghost of the girl within a few days from hearing of her. This story became very popular, especially in Mexico, so much so that it was adopted into Mexican urban legends. That said, the original legend comes from Scotland. Fealgota. Nearly every culture and mythology throughout the entire world have their own version of zombie, or a living corpse. The Fealgota is in a way the Celtic version of the zombie, though there are very important differences between the Fealgota and the modern-day zombie. Found primarily in Irish folklore, the Fealgota is a walking corpse appearing extremely skinny, bony, and malnourished, with grey or brown colored skin and long white hair. Similar to all modern zombie, Fealgota are constantly hungry and wander the countryside looking for food. They are known for especially coming out during times of famine. If a Fealgota approaches a person, the undead creature will ask them for food. If the person refuses the Fealgota's request, it will become angry and attack them, killing them and feasting off their flesh. If a person, however, does give the Fealgota food, the Fealgota will take what it is given and leave that person alone. That person will then be blessed with good luck, so not entirely as bad as the modern zombie, as those who do as the Fealgota asks will be both spared and blessed with good luck. That said, an encounter with a Fealgota is a terrifying event, and the Fealgota were greatly feared by Irish peasants during the medieval era. Lenonshi. Lenonshi is an evil female demon found in Ireland. She is said to be extremely beautiful and would seduce creative people such as artists, poets, and musicians, giving them inspiration for their works. This was at the cost of their lives, however. She would search for an artist, poet, or musician and seduce them, becoming their girlfriend. She would then later break up and leave them. Those that she left would become so depressed they would literally die due to depression, or they would simply commit suicide. Once they were dead, Leonard She would come back and take their corpse back to her lair. Once she brought them back to her lair, she would drain their corpses of blood, pouring it into an iron cauldron. She would use the blood she collected to maintain her youthful looks and beauty so she could continue to seduce more men and continue with her killing spree.
I love you.
The Dibakoo. The Dibakoo is a lake monster that is said to live in the lochs of Ireland. It is a highly aggressive and carnivorous water monster that is around 7 feet large. The Dibakoo is nicknamed the Irish crocodile. That said, it has very little resemblance to an actual crocodile. Instead, the Dibakoo looks similar to an otter, but with long, sharp fangs, thick grey or brown fur, and fish fins. While its appearance may sound silly, it is an extremely violent monster with a taste for human flesh. The Dibakoo is very strong, with the ability to capsize small fishing boats. It moves extremely fast in water, and even has the ability to walk on land, though for only a short time. There are some that believe the Dibakoo is like an Irish version of the Loch Ness Monster. Interestingly, it is said that there are 2 Dibakoo, both of them mates. When one Dibakoo is killed, it will emit an ear-piercing cry that alerts its mate right before dying. Its mate will hear the cry and immediately head towards the area where the cry was from with impossible speed. Once it reaches the area, it will avenge its mate by hunting the one who killed it and brutally rip them apart in its jaws. Will-o'-the-wisp. Will-o'-the-wisp, or will-o'-wisp, are fairy-like creatures found in both Scottish and Irish folklore, though there are similar creatures found in Norse, Estonian, Latvian, Slavic, and even Japanese mythology. Will-o'-wisp are fairies that appear as bright blue lights floating in the sky. They are normally found near bogs, marshlands, and swamps. They are mischievous creatures, as they will act as friendly guides for travelers traveling the road at night. They will try to lure the traveler by acting as lanterns, indicating a town or village. The traveler would walk towards them, only to get lost in a swamp or bog and end up drowning. Their main victims are primarily children, as the color and beauty of the will-o'-wisp would attract young children wanting to catch them, only for those children to get stuck in the swamp or bog and drown. Bearbhan Sith. Bearbhan Sith is an evil female fairy who wanders the thick wooded areas of the Scottish Highlands. She appears as an attractive woman wearing a green dress. Her appearance seems normal, except that she has deer hooves for feet. She will usually stalk hunters during the evening hours, attracted to the scent of animal blood on their clothing. Most hunters would welcome her company as they were hunting, only for her nails to grow into sharp talons. She would then use her sharp claws to rip the hunter apart, drinking their blood and feasting off their organs. Water Lipo. The Water Lipo is an evil monster, originating in the country of Wales, located west of England. It's a giant toad the size of a bear, with large bat wings and a long lizard-like tail, with an extremely deadly and toxic stingo. The Water Lipo lives in ponds and lakes throughout all of Wales. When it sees potential prey, it will leap out of the water with its wings. It will then use the stingo on its tail to impale and kill its victim. The Water Lipo's favorite food is fish, but it will also eat sheep, cattle, and humans. The Water Lipo was considered to be so evil it had a power similar to the basilisk, and its look could kill. It also could emit a blood-curdling shriek which would stun its prey. It would then pull its paralyzed victim into the water and quickly devour them whole. Colin Gunyon. Colin Gunyon, which translates from Scottish Gaelic to headless trunk, is a headless giant from the Isle of Skye, Scotland. He was known as the Headless Trunk because he was as tall as a tree. This highly aggressive giant would go around the small island carrying his own severed head. When encountering people, he would throw his giant head at them, which would crush them, killing them. Sometimes it wouldn't kill them, however, but instead stun them, and in which he would murder them with his bare hands. Originally living on the Isle of Skye, Colin Gunyon went into mainland Scotland due to more people living there, more people he could terrorize and kill. It wasn't until a Scottish soldier challenged the giant to a duel. The giant accepted and threw his head at the soldier. Quickly, the Scottish soldier took his sword, pointing it outward, and caught the giant's head. To get his head back, Colin Gunyon was forced to leave mainland forever and return to the Isle of Skye. Avon. Another lake monster from the country of Wales. The Avon is a evil, giant, demonic monster with the head of a crocodile and the body of a beaver. Like the Dubaku, the appearance of the Avon may sound and look silly, but the Avon was greatly feared in medieval Wales. It was a demonic monster that threatened the people of a Walish town. The legend goes that there was once a town near the lake where the Avon lived. The Avon was extremely large and aggressive, with the strength to cause deadly floods. These floods would kill many people and wash away crops, causing famine. The Avon's skin was also extremely strong, as no spear, sword, or arrow could pierce it, and every attempt to kill it failed. While the Avon posed a terrible threat to the people of the town, they refused to leave their home. Knowing that they couldn't kill the Avon, as its skin was impenetrable to their weapons, they believed that the only way to rid of him was to move him to another lake, one far away from their town. The blacksmith of the town forged an extremely strong iron chain, and their plan was to tie the chain around the Avon's neck and with a team of oxen, lead it to another lake far from their town. There was one major problem to their plan. How could they get the chain around the Avon's neck and lead him to the other lake without him attacking? The answer lied in the daughter of one of the farmers. The Avon was attracted to young, beautiful women, like most monsters in mythology, and the farmer's daughter was considered to be the most beautiful woman in all of Wales. So, knowing what she had to do, the farmer's daughter bravely went to the shore of the lake that the Avon lived, and sat there as bait, with the men from the town hiding in the bushes behind her. The Avon saw her and went up to her. Wide terrified, she stood her ground and began to sing a wailish lullaby. The singing was so sweet and gentle that the Avon forgot about its hunger and fell asleep. With the Avon asleep, the men from the town tied the chain around its neck, and with the team of oxen, they dragged the monster far away to another lake, where it is said to remain there today. Babui. The babui is a giant bird from Scotland who feasts upon sheep and cattle. It will pick up livestock in its giant claws and take them back to its lair near the loch of Argyllshire to consume them. There are some myths that state the babui is a shape-shifting creature, able to change its form, although it commonly stays in its bird form. Other stories state that it has the power to camouflage in surrounding areas. The babui is completely black in color, with claws that resemble human hands with sharp nails. Its head is completely bald, making it look similar to a vulture, but it has gray skin rather than pink. It also has pure black eyes that if anyone looked into them, they would go completely insane. The babui is a malicious creature that will also attack and kill farmers, trying to stop them from taking their livestock. The monster will also sometimes snatch up and eat young children. Ellen Tracan. Ellen Tracan is a three-headed female dragon-like monster from Ireland. This dangerous monster is mentioned in the Cath Meg Macama, an ancient Irish text that in English translates to the Battle of Meg Macama. The text describes Ellen Tracan being born in an underground cave known as the Cave of Criacan. The Ellen Tracan is described as a dragon-like creature with 3 vulture heads, and when she had become full-grown, Ellen Tracan emerged from her cave to bring terror, wrath, and ruin to Ireland. In the Battle of Meg Macama, Ellen Tracan erupted from her cave, causing havoc on the battlefield, killing many soldiers, until the warrior and poet Imogen MacAisit managed to kill the dragon bird hybrid, which finally ended the creature's reign of terror in Ireland. Bagain. The Bagain is a giant or ogre that lives on the Isle of Man, an island in between Britain and Ireland. It is described as a massive creature covered in thick black hair. It has long claws, able to rip people apart, and it had a large red-colored mouth, able to swallow people whole. The Bagain lived underground, beneath abandoned castles, forests, or behind waterfalls, and it spent most of its time alone. Why it would remain by itself, not acting aggressive unless disturbed, it was said to be the servant of fairies, and if someone offended the fairies, the Bagain would be sent to hunt down that person and punish them, usually by crushing them or ripping them apart in its large claws. One story of the Bagain recounts how it was upset at the construction of St. Trinian's Church, and so the brigade would go and tear off the roof of the church. The roof would be rebuilt, and it tore off again. After a third time, the church was abandoned, and it still remains on the Isle of Man today, but without a roof. Cú Chithail. Like creatures of the undead and black birds such as crows, mystic dogs are common in myths throughout the world. The Cú Chithail is a mythical dog found in the Scottish Highlands. It has shaggy fur and red eyes, and around the size of a cow. The Cú Chithail is the Scottish version of the hellhound, which had the ability to appear anywhere it wanted. Cú Chithail are omens of death, similar to the banshee, as when they would howl or bark, it would mean that someone was going to die. Whoever heard the Cú Chithail howl 3 times would end up dead. The howl of the Cú Chithail was also a warning for women to hide, as the Cú Chithail would also work for fairies, kidnapping women and forcing them to work as maids, spending eternity taking care of fairy children. There are some stories with the Cú Chithail acting as a guide to the souls of the dead, leading them to the afterlife. The Derek Dhu. The Derek Dhu, which translates to the Red Bloodsucker, is one of the most famous female demons found in Ireland. Her story goes back long ago, before Christianity was introduced to Ireland. She was the daughter of an Irish chieftain. Her father wanted her to marry a wealthy man who she didn't love. Rather, she was in love with a young peasant boy. Of course, her father wouldn't allow this, and she was forced to marry the rich man, who was very abusive to her. He would constantly beat and mock her. One of his favorite methods of hurting her was taking a knife and cutting her, making her bleed. The abuse was so bad that it led to the point that she committed suicide. The townspeople, feeling guilty due to them knowing of the abuse but too afraid to help, buried her in a nice grave. They remembered her as a sweet and kind young woman who was very loving and forgiving. They believed that such a kind person would forgive both them and her abuser, and that she was clearly in heaven. Because she didn't die in peace, she returned to life as a bloodthirsty, vampiric demon. When she rose from the dead, she killed both her father and the man she was forced to marry by drinking their blood. She returns from the dead once a year to drink the blood of men nearby. There is no way to kill the Derek Dhu, but it is believed that by placing large stones on her grave, it would prevent her from rising up and killing. Again, this didn't kill her, but it would keep people safe from her for the rest of the year. The fear of Derek Dhu was so strong that during the Irish potato famine in the 1800s, Derek Dhu was actually blamed for being a cause of the famine. Before I move on to the next creature on this list, I would like to end the section of the Derek Dhu with this. The author of Dracula, Bram Stoker, was Irish. He was born in the Irish capital city of Dublin and spent much of his life in Ireland. It is well known that he gained much of his inspiration for Dracula on the real-life Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler. But as an Irishman, it is no doubt that Bram Stoker knew of Derek Dhu, as she is an Irish demon that goes all the way back to pagan Ireland. And it is most likely that the story of Derek Dhu had to have some influence on him why he created one of the most famous modern monsters. The Bardak. The Bardak, which translates to Old Man in Scots Gaelic, is the Scottish version of the boogeyman. He is said to appear as a hideous, old, haggard man with wrinkled grey skin. He would climb down the chimney like a corrupted version of Santa Claus to terrorize or even steal the children living inside. He would forcefully poke, pinch, bite, and even molest children while they were in bed. What's worse is that sometimes he would kidnap children, never to be seen again. Stories of the Bardak differ, as sometimes he will only attack naughty children, while other stories state that the Bardak will attack all children regardless of their behavior. The Bardak will only attack children and never adults. It also has a major weakness to salt. Parents would protect their children from the Bardak by placing a circle of salt around their bed, as the Bardak was unable to cross salt. The Sluach. Crows are seen as bad omens in almost every culture, and the Celtic culture is no different. The Sluach is a flock of demons from Irish mythology that take the form of a flock of black crows. The Sluach would fly around, searching for a house where someone was about to die. Once they found one, they would enter from the west window and steal the soul of the dying person and take them to hell. The Sluach were most active during the Night of Samhain, the Gaelic festival marking the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. The Sluach are said to be the offspring of a terrible demonic monster. Due to the threat of the Sluach stealing the souls of dying people, Irish families would keep the windows on the west side of their house barred shut, so the Sluach could not enter and take the soul to hell. In another variant of the Sluach myth, they are not demons, but rather the souls of sinners who refuse to move on and risk entering hell, and so they remain on earth, searching for more souls to join them in their eternal wandering of the world. Banshee. Probably the most famous and well-known of all mythical creatures found in Celtic mythology, Banshee are Irish omens of death. They are ghost-like creatures, appearing as either hideous old hags or even young women crying. Whenever a banshee is heard wailing, it means someone in the area is about to die. The myths vary, as some state that a banshee will screech only once, and that would mean a person was about to die. But other stories state a banshee would screech 3 times before a person would die. Another story states that the banshee will only cry out before a member of one of Ireland's noble families was about to die, while others state she will cry out for anyone. Despite certain depictions, banshees are not considered evil. They are simply omens warning of death approaching. While not as common, there is another version of the banshee acting as the Grim Reaper, and will screech right before someone is about to die, and then take them to the afterlife. This myth, however, isn't as common as them simply warning of death. Whether the banshee is seen as an old haggard woman, a young girl, an omen of death for noble families, or an omen of death for anyone, it is agreed that the wails of a banshee is one of the most terrifying sounds anyone could hear. Redcap. Redcap are found living in abandoned castles on the Scottish and English border. They are goblin-like creatures around 2 feet tall. They are extremely violent and bloodthirsty creatures who enjoy killing people who wander into their homes. Redcap enjoy living in castles that were the site of large, bloody battles. They get their names from the red cap that they wear on their heads, which is red due to these goblins painting them with the blood of those that they kill. Their caps are actually the source of their life force. If the blood on these caps ever dry up or fade away, the red cap will die. Because of this, red cap constantly have to kill people to keep a steady supply of fresh blood. They wear heavy iron shoes on their feet. Despite this, they are extremely fast runners, able to catch up with those who run from them. Despite their size of being 2 feet tall, they are extremely strong. The only way for one to be safe from a redcap is to repeat a verse from the Bible. Redcap are demons and fear the Bible above all other things. The only way to kill a redcap is to somehow keep them from putting more fresh blood on their caps and wait till it dries up, or to take their caps off their heads, which is not an easy task. Redcap are some of the most feared and violent monsters found in Celtic mythology. Ankou. Ankou is an entity found in the folklore of Cornwall, as well as in Welsh, English, and even French/Norman mythology. He is the servant and helper of death, or the Grim Reaper. He is a tall, skeletal figure wearing a long brown cloak and wearing a brimmed hat. Like modern depictions of the Grim Reaper, Ankou carries a scythe with him. He isn't death himself, but his helper, as he will sometimes collect the souls of the dead in a cart pulled by a skinny, malnourished horse. There is one famous story about Ankou found in an 1839 book written by Theodore Horsalt. In the story, Ankou is driving his cart searching for the souls of the dead. 3 young, drunken men were walking the same road as he was, and when they saw him, 2 of them began to throw rocks at Ankou's cart, breaking one of the wheels. The 2 of them ran off, but the 3rd one felt sorry and helped Ankou fix the wheel on his cart. The next day, the 2 men who had thrown rocks at Ankou's cart were found dead in their homes. As for the man who had helped Ankou, he was spared, but his hair had turned white and he was unable to speak again. Kelpie. The Kelpie is a famous water monster from the lochs and rivers of Scotland that primarily appears as a white or black horse, either drinking or wading near the body of water. The Kelpie is a Scottish demon which, like many other mythical creatures found in Celtic mythology, has the ability to shapeshift. Other than a horse, Kelpie were also able to transform into either an attractive woman or a big, hairy man. Whether it took the form of a horse or of a human, the Kelpie would always have seaweed or wet leaves and grass caught in its mane or hair. Kelpie were feared because they were carnivorous monsters which fed on humans. To do this, the Kelpie would transform into its horse form and try to lure travelers, who were mainly women and children, to try to get close to it, either to pet it or even get on it to ride. Once a person got close and touched the Kelpie, their hand would become magically stuck to the monster's skin. the Kelpie would immediately run towards the body of water and jump in, swimming to the very bottom. The person stuck to the Kelpie would drown and die. Once the person the Kelpie had tricked was dead, the Kelpie would eat their corpse. There is one famous story about the Kelpie that involves a group of children. These children were playing near a loch. While they were playing, they saw a pure white horse wading in the shallow end of the water. All of them went over to the horse and they decided to get on its back. The oldest and tallest of them picked the other children up and placed them upon the horse's back. There wasn't enough room for the oldest child, so he just patted the horse with his fingers. Immediately, he felt his fingers become stuck to the horse's skin. The other children complained that they couldn't move. The horse instantly began running extremely fast towards the deeper part of the loch. The children on its back began screaming, yelling out that they could not get off the creature no matter how hard they tried. The horse continued running farther into the deeper water. The oldest of the children used his free hand and grabbed a knife that he had in his pocket. With his knife, he cut off his own fingers and had freed himself. The other children continued screaming until the Kelpie reached the deep part of the loch and jumped in, disappearing underneath the water with the children. Caith Sith. The Caith Sith is a creature from the Scottish Highlands. Translating to cat fairy, it is a large black cat the size of a dog, such as a German Shepherd or Saint Bernard. The Caith Sith is completely black except for a white spot located on its chest. While the Caith Sith might not sound as scary as other monsters on this list, it was feared in the Scottish Highlands, as it was believed the Caith Sith could steal the souls of the dead before they could reach the afterlife and take them to hell. It was believed that a Caith Sith could steal the soul of a person by walking across their grave shortly after being buried. Because of this, cats were kept out of Scottish cemeteries, and family members with dead relatives would stand guard at their deceased family member's grave shortly after their funeral for a few hours. They did this as a way to keep their deceased family member's soul safe from the Caith Sith, keeping any black cats from walking over their family member's grave and stealing the person's soul. Once a few hours had passed, the family members would later leave, as it was believed by then the soul of the deceased family member had arrived in the afterlife and could not be stolen by the Caith Sith. The Questing Beast. The Questing Beast is probably one of the most famous monsters found in the stories of King Arthur. Of course, the tale of King Arthur comes from later Celtic and British mythology. The Questing Beast is a large monster, with the body of a grey leopard, the head and neck of a venomous snake, the tail and hindquarters of a lion, and the legs and hooves of a deer. The Questing Beast was a wild and aggressive monster whose roar sounded like 30 hunting dogs all barking at the same time. When the monster drank water from wells and streams, it would end up poisoning the water, which would end up killing anyone who drank from it. I am about to tell the origin story of the Questing Beast. I need to warn all viewers that this story includes adult material that some viewers may find inappropriate. To avoid hearing this story, please skip to this time. I will now begin. The origin of the questing beast goes back centuries ago. Many years ago, in a vassal kingdom to the kingdom of Camelot, there was a Celtic princess who had developed strong, lustful feelings for her own brother. As Christians, she knew that her brother would never lie with her, and so she tried to ignore her lust. Later, however, she could no longer resist, and she went to a witch. She told the witch about her problem, and the witch agreed to create a potion that would cause her brother to fall in love with her. The princess gave her brother the potion, and he drank it. Later that night, her brother entered her room, and they committed the incestuous act. The princess became pregnant, and 9 months later, she gave birth to the questing beast. What had actually happened was that the witch had tricked the princess. The potion was nothing more than colored water that had no effect on her brother, and it wasn't him that had entered into her room that night. Instead, the witch had summoned a demon from hell. The witch told the demon of what the princess wanted to do, and so it disguised itself as her brother and went into her room at night. And so, the questing beast was the child of a princess and a demon. The questing beast caused sickness, death, and destruction throughout the countryside. Many knights sought and hunted down the beast, but all were killed by its poisonous bite or breath. It was not until a knight named Sir Palomedes, a Saracen who had converted to Christianity and became a knight of the Round Table, hunted down the monster. Sir Palomedes managed to kill the monster by stabbing it in the chest with his lance. The questing beast let out a terrifying screech and fell back into a nearby lake. The lake began to boil and even shoot out flames until the body of the beast sank to the bottom and disappeared. Dullahan. The Dullahan is a famous demon from Ireland. It is the original headless horseman and is likely an inspiration of the famous story written by Washington Irving. Dullahan are headless beings who can be both male and female that ride upon black horses in the night. They are known as the heralds of death and carry whips made out of human spines. Dullahan will also carry their own severed heads with them. Whenever they want to see further, they will lift their severed head above their shoulders. When they do this, they have the ability to see for several miles. Their heads are skulls with decaying flesh and hair, and their eyes glow red with fire. Dullahan are among the most feared demons in Irish mythology. They will ride throughout the country during the night, only stopping on occasion to call out the name of a person. Whenever they call out the name of a person, that person will immediately die. A Dullahan's horse can run so fast that sparks emit from its hooves. Whoever looks at a Dullahan is said to go blind from the terrible look of these demons. Town gates magically open to Dullahan, allowing them to enter into any town or city at night. Whenever a Dullahan enters a town, all inhabitants hide under their blankets, hoping and praying that the demon is only passing by. Dullahan are feared because unlike the famous Banshee or the Bee Nye, who are only warnings of death, Dullahan willingly bring death with them and enjoy causing terror to the people of Ireland. They are constantly looking for more people to kill, whether it be by calling out their name, whipping them to death with their human spines as they use for weapons, or even throwing their decaying heads at them. Before I move on to the next number on this list, I'd like to end off the Dullahan with this. In Celtic mythology and ancient Celtic religion, it was believed that the head contained the soul, which was the essence of a person's personality and morals. So, for the Dullahan to be headless was a symbolic representation of the Dullahan not having a soul at all, and this would also mean they had no morals as well, nor any personality other than spreading death and terror to the people of Ireland. Balor, the Irish Demon King. Balor is an ancient Celtic entity going all the way back to the beginning of civilization in Ireland. His name literally means the Deadly One. He is the king and leader of a mythical race known as the Fomorians, who were a race of malevolent, demonic beings. Balor was the largest and strongest of them. He was a giant, with hideous grey skin and a single evil eye, located on his forehead, which had the power to kill all that it gazed on. Balor was a tyrant who opposed the Irish people from his dark fortress on a small island off the northwest coast of Ireland called Tory Island. Originally, Balor was much smaller and didn't have an evil eye, but when he was young, he looked into a cauldron filled with a magic potion that his father's druids were working on. He accidentally got his face too close to the boiling liquid, and some of it spilled onto his face. The potion affected him, turning his skin grey and forcing him to grow extremely large. The potion also forced his two eyes to merge into a single one, and gave him the power to shoot deadly fire out of his eye, which was his greatest weapon. Along with his evil eye, Balor also had a magical glass, which would allow him to see anyone in the world. When he would look at the image of a person in his glass, he had the power to kill them if he wanted to, simply by gazing at them. This gave him the power to kill anyone in the world, no matter where they were, making him one of the most dangerous beings in mythology. One story about Balor begins when he overhears one of his father's druids stating a prophecy that he would be killed by his own grandchild. To prevent this, Balor locked his own daughter in the dungeons of his fortress on Tory Island. One day, Balor stole a mythical creature known as the Cow of Abundance, which belonged to the smith god Gorwnu. A servant of Gorwnu named Cain went after Balor, sneaking into the Demon King's fortress. There, he discovered Balor's daughter and had intercourse with her, before being found by Balor and killed by him. Balor's daughter later gives birth to his grandchild, Lug. The demonic king discovers this, and he throws his own grandchild into the sea in the attempt to either drown him or have him crushed by the waves and rocks. However, Lug is saved by the Celtic sea god, Mananese, who raises Lug as his own stepson. Once Lug had grown up, he becomes the king of the Tuatha Duin, the gods of Ireland who opposed the evil race of the Fomorians. Lug leads an army to face the Fomorians, led by his grandfather, Balor, in a battle known as the Battle of Magtar begins. Many are slain in this great battle as the field becomes stained with the blood of both heroes and monsters. At the height of the battle, Lug manages to throw his spear into Balor's eye, and the evil demonic god is killed. The battle ends with Lug and the Tuatha Duin victorious. There is another version on how Balor dies that states that Balor was beheaded by Lug. When his head fell to the ground, his eyes shot a beam of fire that melted through the earth, creating a giant hole, which filled with water, becoming a lake known as Loch Nassau, which translates in English to the Lake of the Eye. Cothernach. Snakes, or serpents, are found everywhere in the world, and so are also found in various mythical stories, folk tales, and religions. While there are some cultures who view the serpent as a positive symbol, there are many other cultures and religions who see snakes as more negative, more hostile creatures. There are many mythical monsters found throughout the world with serpent or snake-like features to them. Cothernach, like Balar, is an ancient demon from Ireland. However, while Balar was the king of the demonic race known as the Fomorians, Cothernach is known as the mother of all demons, and is seen as even more dangerous and evil. There are several depictions of her. One depiction of Cothernach being half woman, half snake, making her very similar to another mythical monster, Echidna, found in Greek mythology. Both are evil female snake monsters who give birth to the majority of monsters in both the mythologies they come from. Both are equally dangerous, but Cothernach is much more demonic. There are other depictions of Cothernach that include her being a giant snake without any feminine features to her. In another depiction states she appears more like a dragon. Regardless on what she looked like, Cothernach was feared throughout all of Ireland. Cothernach was born in the fires of the underworld and was said to exist since the beginning of the world. In a book called The Irish Fairy Folk Series, it states that when the planet was just a swirling mass of vapors, waters, and rock, Cothernach was born, deep inside the molten core of Earth. She spent her existence causing death and destruction in Ireland for thousands of years, and giving life to several demons that caused destruction throughout the countryside. Other than the mother of all demons, Cothernach was also known as the Fire Spitter, for she had the ability to breathe fire, which destroyed everything in its path. She also had toxic breath, which poisoned all sources of water she drank from. She lived in a dark cave underneath a lake known as Loch Logdog, which was believed to be the gateway to the underworld. Her reign of terror lasted until St. Patrick brought Christianity to Ireland. From the mountain of Croagh, now known today as Croagh Patrick, St. Patrick drove all the serpents out of Ireland. Cothernach was angered by this, as the serpents of Ireland were some of her children. From her cave underneath Loch Logdog, Cothernach burst forth from the loch and slithered to the mountain that St. Patrick stood on. There, both she and the holy saint battled against each other. St. Patrick went on his knees and began to pray. Cothernach called out to more of her children, the Sluach, to attack St. Patrick. The Sluach swarmed to the sky, but before they could attack St. Patrick, a powerful wind blew them away. Upset at this, Cothernach then spat flesh-melting fire at the saint, but Patrick was protected by God, and an angel blocked the monster's fire with a holy shield. Cothernach then breathed her toxic and deadly breath on the saint, but again, St. Patrick was protected, and the poisonous breath had no effect on him. Seeing that her powers had no effect on the saint, the snake monster spat lies in the attempt to fill St. Patrick with doubt. She believed that if she could get the saint to stop praying, then she could kill the saint. For 2 whole days, Cothonach threw insults to both Saint Patrick and to God. Despite this, Saint Patrick continued to pray and remained under God's protection. What Cothonach did not know was that the saint was actually charging up for a powerful prayer, one powerful enough that it would banish even Cothonach from Ireland. Cothonach finally fled, and so St. Patrick began to chase her around Ireland in the attempt to banish her with the powerful prayer. St. Patrick rode upon the fastest horse on the island and chased her throughout Ireland. Cothonach, however, was very fast and kept ahead of St. Patrick. Knowing that he would become thirsty chasing her, Cothonach drank from all the wells she came upon, poisoning them and making them deadly to drink from. St. Patrick, however, kept strong and ignored his thirst, passing by all the poison wells without drinking. After days of running, Cothonach came to a dead end, a cliff, and St. Patrick had caught up with her before she could escape. Once he had caught up with her, St. Patrick said his prayer, which forced Cothonach to leave Ireland forever, never to return. She is said to still be alive, however, locked in the underworld, hoping for a chance to return to Earth and give life to more demonic creatures. The Knuckleavee. The Knuckleavee is one of the most disturbing, disgusting, goriest, and just pure evil monsters found not just in Celtic mythology, but in mythology as a whole. It is a disgusting, demonic monster that appears as a horse with the torso, arms, and head of a man attached in the middle of its back. The creature is completely skinless, showing off its red, raw, and bloody muscles. The monster has yellow veins and black blood, which can be seen moving throughout its body. The Knuckleavee's arms are extremely long and are ape-like, and its head is much larger than the rest of its body. He is said to be 10 times the size of a normal man. His mouth is wide enough to swallow a person whole and jutted out like a pig's snout. The Knuckleavee lives on the far northern coasts of Scotland on the Orkney Islands. The Knuckleavee is an extremely evil demon, as he exists only for the purpose of causing terror, plague, and death to those living on the Orkney Islands and the northern coast of Scotland. He loved causing destruction so much that he never rested from his task. The people of the Orkney Islands constantly lived in fear of the Knuckleavee, so much so that people even refused to speak of him as they feared him too much that even saying his name was believed to bring bad fortune. The Knuckleavee had the powers to cause several disasters. He could create deadly plagues that killed both people and livestock. He had the power to wilt crops, completely destroying them and causing great famines. All of these disasters were caused by the Knuckleavee's breath, which was described as venom falling like blight on vegetable and with deadly disease on animal life. He also had the ability to manipulate the weather, causing both floods and droughts. The Knuckleavee was the most feared of all demons to the people of the Orkney Islands and northern Scotland. He was the most powerful and dangerous of all monsters. The fear that people had for the Knuckleavee was greater than they had for any other monster. The fear of him was so great that the belief in the Knuckleavee lasted all the way until the early 1900s.